Well, welcome everybody. I've lost count of the number of real debates we've done now, but this is going to be a really interesting one. Today, I have great pleasure in welcoming David Stone and Neal Maxwell and Dan Evans, and we will be talking about farming, construction, packaging and education, and why they need each other in the world of new material innovation as the global economy becomes less dependent on petrochemicals. So firstly, David, just a bit of background about David. David is the co-founder of Carbon Trap. Carbon Trap uses natural-based solutions to promote biodiversity, sustainability, carbon capture and storage. They supply the bioeconomy with knowledge and sponsorship for the use of natural fibers and products that are appealing, affordable and sustainable. He's also one of the experts on miscanthus. More on that later. And Neal, Neal's background, where are we now? Neal's the founder of Changing Streams, and Changing Streams help reduce plastic pollution, build a global community, and collaborate to save our oceans and the environment. Acting as the bridge between academia and industry, they affect change through various methods and aim to prove much of this through science. Welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, we've got Dan Evans, who most of you know by now. Dan's the doctor of packaging and can read and understand a white paper faster than anybody I know. Got an amazing attention to detail. So welcome, everybody. So I always start with the first question to break the ice. So gentlemen, what do you like doing when you're not working your socks off? What are your passions? David, you go first.
Yeah, well, when I'm not working my socks off, it's normally walking. I do a lot of walking and very much enjoy the whole getting back to nature thing and just sort of being in nature. We're very lucky here in North Devon because we've got a lot of roads and public footpaths and things that we can walk through. And actually, I just think it's the great way to relax and clear the mind. So that's my passion, as it were.
Yeah, I share that with you. And Neal, what's your passion or passions?
I could basically repeat what David's just said. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah, I love walking, mountain trekking, stuff like that. My playground is Snowdonia because an hour and a half from there on the Wirral. And I love walking. I love most things outdoor, but most of my time is spent on when I'm not working, when I'm not with family. It's walking. So when I can sail, but I don't get as many opportunities these days. I used to do a lot of sailing, but
what sort of sailing?
I've done a bit of cruising and I've done a bit of racing. Cool. So mostly around the Cans locally, and also done some stuff abroad, and a lot of cruising around Ireland and Scotland. So I really enjoy that and I miss that. But that's on my to-do list when I get time.
What's your favourite peak? As my family home's about 45 minutes away from Betws-y-Coed in Ruthin. So it's like you, it's my playground. Where's the fave?
Well, Triffan's got to be up there, hasn't it?
Triffan's great, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite challenging. There's so many different routes up Triffan, so that's always a challenging, climb. I like the Carnedai as well. It's it's less congested than Snowdon itself. Snowdon massive. Cribgoch I always find interesting.
You English and your pronunciations of Welsh.
I know.
God, it's offensive.
I'm sorry. I apologise. For that. But yeah, I mean, I sort of. I'm not a lover of heights, which is a weird thing. So. So Cribgoch is one of those challenges for me that once I'm up there, I'm all right, but it's kind of just a bit freaky when you get up there. And right.
Terrifying.
Come on, Dan. I know you like to dive straight in there with the hard questions. Have you got a question for Neal and David?
A hard question. Good Lord. I suppose, how did it start? What got your interest into it and what do you think you can achieve?
Who's that aimed at? Me?
Both of you. Both of you.
David, you go first.
Go on, David.
Yeah, I think I mean, my background was we sort of grew up on farms, and I always had an interest in the countryside and the farm. But I sort of went into technology and software development, and in the days when, as far as I was concerned, technology was quite exciting. But I became aware as time went on that, you know, we're losing our sort of connection with nature, and the more I read the news, the more they were always looking for sort of technology-based solutions to absolutely everything. When I was looking out and around me and going, actually, do you know what? We've got one of the greatest scientists in nature that's actually been evolving and providing solutions to mankind for so many years, you know, that we sort of seemingly lost our way. And then I was introduced to miscanthus a number of years ago, about 25 years ago, and thought, do you know what, this could have significant impacts on our planet and the ability for it to sort of capture carbon and actually get back to nature providing materials for industry. And so I became quite excited by that, and I've actually followed the story and was involved with it as an investor for a number of years. And then about 2 or 3
for the benefit of people who don't know what miscanthus is it just worth doing a quick, you know?
Yeah,
because people won't know necessarily what miscanthus is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the common term for it is elephant grass. It's very similar to bamboo, a lignocellulistic crop. So it effectively, it's a little bit like trees. You know, it sort of has lignin and hemicellulose and cellulose as its key components. I think that the closest thing you could say is bamboo. It looks like a small brother to bamboo. It's a perennial crop, which means it grows every year. It has no input, so it doesn't require fertilizers or anything like that. Very good at sequestering carbon, and has multiple potential uses within construction, as I know we're going to be talking about construction, packaging, and various green chemicals as well. So it's a very, very versatile crop, and there's not a huge amount of it grown here in the UK, but we're on a bit of a sort of evangelical mission to increase the amount that we use and actually bridge that sort of gap between industry and the rural economy, where traditionally we've maybe grown more meat. Well, meat's now obviously reducing to a large degree. We've also need to get involved again in regenerative agriculture, because obviously we've taken a lot of the nutrients out of the soils. So I think the common thing is now that we're something like 97% depleted in carbon. Carbon plays quite a role in actual soil health, and we need to look at restoring our soils as well. Well, we're not going to do that by continually taking and not putting something back in. When we were young, you know, people used to do a lot of rotational cropping because they understood very clearly that, you know, what you took out, you needed to put back in again. But you know, over that period of time, there's been a lot of pressure on farmers to be more intensive with their growing of crops and food and so on and so forth. But at some point in time, you reach a limitation on what the soil can provide. And I think we're quite in a good place now, where we can sort of provide. We've got something that can actually regenerate our soils and actually start providing and replacing fossil fuel based materials where possible. And so it grows to about 3-4 meters high. So it's the highest yield biomass that we've currently got in Europe. That's not bamboo based. Sorry, that's hopefully a very quick.
That's good. That was really interesting. Thank you, Neil. How about yourself?
Well, yeah, I've had sort of 35 years or so involvement in the fit out business, so office fit out, which is part of construction. So we do the finishing trades. We fit out design and fit out offices. And I've been involved with that for so long, 32 years running my own business. And in 2018, the environment was always something of interest to me, mainly highlighted through the Blue Planet series and other series that have been on the TV, kind of raising awareness about the plight that, we're facing now, and the shocking reports that we've all seen. And in 2018, I sort of set myself a few challenges as part of my 60th year. And one of those challenges was to go up to the Arctic and spend some time up there on an expedition. Of course, these things don't work up there, so you kind of have to focus in. No one has a signal. The only person that has a signal is the skipper who's got a sat phone. So I was on a ship with about 20 odd scientists from around the world, and we'd go out each day. There was only 10 of us allowed out off the ship on the kayak, so I was lucky enough to be one of those. So kayaking in the Arctic Ocean, Greenland Sea, Barents Sea, and we came face to face with the destruction that the human race have caused into this planet, in the most pristine place in the world that you'd imagine to be the most pristine place in the world. I came face to face with the destruction that we're causing. So each night we'd have a lecture from the various scientists, whether it was on geology or whether it's on historical stuff, glacial recession, global warming, carbon emissions, plastic pollution, etc., and so forth.
When you say, sorry, bear with me here. When you say you came face to face with the destruction that we've caused, what exactly was it you came face to face with, other than the recession glaciers?
Yeah, good question, Dan. I sort of learned about glacial recession quite a lot. So we sort of went into bays where there were once glaciers coming up, so miles deep, and now you can see the rock face so that they're leaving behind. Basically you can see where the glaciers have receded, how much they've receded, and we learned how quickly they receded as well because of the global warming impact, and that's obviously because of the carbon emissions and the global warming, etc. But we also did litter picking, which is surprising because I never expected to do that in the Arctic. So we went on to some of the remote. We started off in Svalbard in Longyearbyen, which is the northernmost town, inhabited place before you get to the North Pole, 78 degrees north, and then we headed due north towards the North Pole. We actually had to travel another 3.5 degrees before we hit the hard ice pack around the North Pole. And that may not sound a lot, but if I tell you each degree is about 60 odd miles in nautical terms, so that's a long way to go before you hit the pack ice. And at that time of year, we were expecting to see a lot of ice around the northeast side of the island, of the archipelago of islands, because on the west side, you've still got the benefit of the Gulf Stream, the tail off of the Gulf Stream, but on the east side, it's colder, so you'd normally expect to see hard ice. We never saw any, so hence we had to go up. But we were doing plastic litter picking off the beaches, and they're not just ghost nets, and there were small particles of plastic as well littered everywhere, because what you realize is the ocean currents move this stuff around the world, so naturally it's going to touch all these areas.
How did that make you feel when you saw that?
Shocked, I think, really shocked. So we went out with bags each day, so there were zodiacs as well, so inflatable ribs that people that weren't kayaking go to shore on the zodiacs, weather permitting, and do some litter picking and learn about the whaling industries and the hunting, etc., and all about the historical stuff around.
So it's not just one little bit of picking that you have to do. Literally several people with bags every day.
Every day. Yeah, absolute madness. Yeah. So really, what that did for me was it kind of really hit home. So on getting home, the first thing you do when you get home is go to the shops and get some food, fresh milk, etc., bread,
wrapped in plastic.
All wrapped in plastic. And I said to my wife, I can't stay in the shop. Went into supermarkets, I can't stay in here. So came out and I thought, I've got to do something about this. So my journey then continued because, well, my life changed completely then. I think it was, people say that I had this epiphany, whatever it was. What I do know is I found my purpose. It took me to get to 60 to find that, and I've always been asking that question personally, like probably we all have, but it took me to 60. Yeah, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? I'm not here just to build offices, you know, I've got more important stuff to do than that. And
I haven't told many people this, but my epiphany moment actually happened at 10 a.m. on December the 26th, 2004, when I first found out what a tsunami was. And sadly, I lost 6 friends in a place called Kolak in Thailand. And that then, very soon after that, my sister and I set up a charity called the Kolak Community Appeal. But then I watched around that period the Inconvenient Truth, you know, the film by Al Gore. And I had this sort of wake up thing, like, what are we doing to the planet? My goodness. That was sort of 2005, I guess, around about that. Yeah, so there you go. Well, look, I've got a question for you. So since the Industrial Revolution, farming has become so intensive, relying on pesticides and mechanization. What impacts is this having on the environment and human health? I think we all know what the answer is to that. But from your point of view, you know, what are we seeing from a farming point of view, David? What are the impacts?
I think the main thing is, as I said before, is really the reduction in the productivity of the soil. We've obviously seen a loss of biodiversity, which is a huge problem. The difficulty is, in reality, the pressure placed on the rural economy to feed the number of people that we've got on the planet at the moment. So, you know, obviously we're not increasing our land resources, but we're certainly increasing the consumers of the food. I think it's a difficult one because these guys are in a really tight corner, because if you go down the organic route, you can't provide the quantities that people are requiring. But at the same time, there's a huge cost. There is a huge cost in everything that's going on. The machinery is getting bigger. So, of course, as we'll all be aware, that's going to take more mining and more industry, polluting industry problems. And you know what? It's one of these things where everything, it's almost like a sort of house of cards, because if one thing falls, then everything falls along with it. And it worries me to a large degree that we've become a wasteful society when you look at the amount of food waste that's been going on for years. And actually just going back to the comment there by Neal with, you know, the amount of plastic that's used to wrap food. So we're actually mining, or we're taking all this stuff out of the ground, we're creating plastics with it,
throwing it away,
buying the food and then chucking it away. Well, you know,
I think the stats are we throw about a third of our food away.
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? So we're actually asking the land to provide us with a third of the output that's actually thrown away. So I think that we need to be, as the everyday people in the street, need to be aware of the impact that we're having on the environment, and people who actually work in the environment and work with the environment, and actually say, you know, what can we do to reduce our consumerism, and actually maybe pushing for quality over quantity. Most of us are probably overweight, or a lot of us are overweight, and that's, you know, going back, the same thing for me. You know, it's obviously eating excess food. So I think there's an awful lot.
Drinking too much wine in my case, David.
All the pressure on those poor French farmers there, Ian, like, you know.
That's all right.
But I think it's,
Sorry, you're French.
Pressure, yeah. There's a huge amount of pressure on the rural economy to provide more and more and more, and actually, as I say, you know, we're not producing any more land. So therefore, what we've got to do is actually, as a general public, we have to be respectful of the fact that we're demanding more and more, and therefore, if we reduce our own consumerism, then we reduce the pressure on the land. Therefore, we reduce the pressure on the farmers you know, use more and more of these things, pesticides, artificial fertilizers, and things like that, because the ground cannot provide what it needs to.
I watched an interesting program on TV last night about electronic goods, which was really interesting, and it talked about, you know, recycling these things. And you know, I can remember those days years ago when you had, if your washing machine packed in, or you know, a mechanical thing packed in, you could get it repaired, because there was a fella up the road always had spare parts, and the guy that came round always had spare parts in his van. It was easy. And the marketeers have created this model where it's a disposable society, and businesses
to get the latest version.
Quieter,
faster,
and the cost of repair for a say, I don't know, cheap microwave might be about 50 quid, but you get a new one for 50 quid. So let's just throw it away and get a new one. And that's the kind of attitude that we've now been brainwashed into. So we automatically default into throwaway and disposable. So I absolutely agree with David that we've got to reduce our consumption, not of everything, you know, of everything, because you know there's something called Earth Overshoot Day, and it happens at different times around the world, but I believe ours is around about sort of I don't know, May or April. But we're taking from the Earth at the rate of 1.7 times it can provide. So we're actually in negative equity with the Earth. From the goods and services we require from the Earth, we're in negative equity. And the only way it can continue to deliver on those services and goods that it provides us is by reducing the natural biodiversity. That can't continue. That's an unsustainable model, full stop.
Well, we've got 8.5 billion people on the planet. In the West, we are burning, I think an average consumer in the UK is burning something like 6-7 kilowatts of energy per head per year, I think. And in India, it's 1.5 kilowatts. In the US, it's 12. You know, but it actually needs to be 1.5 for us all to survive. You know,
if I could just kind of put a reality check on that, India, far less developed than the modern world.
For sure.
And that's probably why I suspect it's not because India is better at looking after the planet. Lots of pollution comes from.
No.
They just don't have the resources that we do, financial or otherwise, to actually generate that electricity.
I agree, Dan, but they're going to want, these people are going to want the stuff that we've had. They're going to want to consume. And whilst countries like India and China are generating energy using coal-fired power stations, we've got a massive problem.
We do.
Massive problem. Anyway,
I think it goes further than that, though. I mean, you know, a lot of people talk about sustainability these days, and they talk about, you know, we'll buy something because it's sustainable, but actually nobody seems to really know what sustainability is. My take on sustainability is there's no sustainability without renewability. And, you know, I see these people, I see this at the moment, and just one of the things that's interesting me is this hydrogen vs EVs. And I haven't seen anybody yet, and heat pumps are the other thing, and they keep going on about, you know, how we ought to have more heat pumps and how we ought to have more electric cars. And nobody brings into the conversation the amount of lithium we've got for the batteries. What potential problems we're giving future societies with this craziness, you know, and actually
unintended consequences.
But hydrogen is a free resource. We've just got to work out how to do something with it. And I think
transported, etc.
Sorry?
Better transportation of it and storage of hydrogen, because that's
I mean, key to everything is actually, is it renewable? And I'm a firm believer in that we ought to look at every problem and say, how can we solve this problem with something that is renewable?
Absolutely.
Well, I was looking at the greenhouse gas emissions and where is it coming from? 25% is coming from energy, about 20% from agriculture and land, about another 20% from industry, 14% from transportation, and then food is about 7%, buildings about 6%, and then other 9%. So, you know, the big portion of that is, and we've been talking about it, is energy, isn't it? And then the next one is agriculture. Okay, Dan, you've got a question. Dive in.
Yeah, so with all these problems then, what projects have you had that you're most proud of, that have really made a difference, you feel, or ones that you have that are up and coming?
Want me to go first? Or?
Can do.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, okay.
I kind of just like, it's a free-for-all. Ask the questions, just answer it.
Okay, well, we're on the verge of securing a couple of major projects, which is really exciting. We've spent the last couple of years developing strategies and processes with the University of Liverpool. So on the back of that Arctic trip, we set up changing streams with a focus on reducing plastic use and reliance within the construction sector. And the underlying reason for that is because we realised very quickly that the construction sector is the second largest user of plastic after the packaging industry. So we generate in the UK alone 50,000 tonnes of plastic packaging waste every year in the construction sector. That's
50,000 tonnes a year, is it?
Yeah, yeah. That's just plastic packaging. So that's significant. We know that there's 380 million tonnes of plastic produced every year. 20% of that is dedicated to the construction industry. So we have to reduce our use and reliance of that. And what you talked about before, Ian, about the Industrial Revolution, well, that's when, plastic came about, if you like, in the early 1900s. I mean, we invented something called Tupperware, it was Bakelite.
Wow, no, I was doing some research because I'm doing this thing at the Chelmsford Girls' Grammar School. Apparently, according to my notes here, this is important to record.
Yeah.
Back in 1869, 150 years ago, a firm in New York offered $10,000 to the first person to come up with an alternative to ivory to make billiard balls.
Okay.
No, sorry. No, I'll get this correct. To come up with an alternative to substitute ivory. And the reason why is that they were worried about the safety of hunters, basically. They weren't worried about the elephants and the rhinoceros and God knows what else. They were worried about the safety of the hunters. And of course, from there, we had this cascade, then 1907 Bakelite, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah.
That's interesting. So that's really. I'll have to look that up. Actually, it's really interesting. So the projects what we're doing is as you said before, Ian, we are the bridge between academia and industry. Industry have got a desire to upwardly innovate and respond to the green agenda and reduce their carbon and plastic footprints, but they haven't got always necessarily the wherewithal to deliver on that. They haven't got the technical expertise. And similarly, universities and higher education institutions have got great brains, but they haven't got a great deal of experience in deploying that into industry. So we kind of act as a matchmaker to that. So we've developed a membership model. We're a not-for-profit organisation. So as you know, we've developed a membership model that people want to join us and develop those ideas to help them become greener for the future. So what we're currently on the verge of signing up. We signed up a housing association, one of the largest in the UK, and we're about to, we hope, fingers crossed, in a very near future, sign up to a 5-year project with them, which is really exciting, and that will bring in all elements. So that will be a lot of research and consultancy that we'll be working closely with them on to develop a strategy to reduce their plastic footprints and their carbon footprints and look at the fuel poverty and all of those aspects as well alongside that. So that's really exciting. We're also about to we're working with a large developer, one of the UK's largest developers, who are involved in one of the largest projects in the UK at the moment. And they've asked us to work with them. They've incorporated us into their sustainable strategy for the project, which is about 40-50-year project. So it's significant. And they want to work with us on that to develop a plastic reduction program. The first piece of work that we'll be doing for them is to develop a set of tools, which will be version 1, if you like, of a set of guidelines and tools that help to reduce your plastic footprint in a demonstrable way, rather than just for it to be hearsay, because a lot of people are trying to do it by saying, will you reduce? Yes, we'll try our hardest, but there's no evidence.
Measured.
It's got to be measured, it's got to be robust. So we're developing a process that can measure that, and for it to be robust reporting that we can actually demonstrably show the plastic reduction.
Are you doing that by weight or units or both?
It's got to be qualitative rather than quantitative, because there's so many variations in it, because it's incredibly difficult to break down the amount of plastic there might be in a tin of paint, for example. It's almost impossible to understand how much it is. The same in windows, you know. So we've got it's all about qualitative control.
Because what we've seen in the world of packaging over the last 10 years is the drive to lightweight has actually favoured the use of plastic, you know, because plastics perform very well with lightweight. But of course, that's created other problems. So weight can sometimes send you off on the wrong course.
Well, this is where I mean, this is a big, really big point that, you know, we're trying to drive home at the moment with people. We've got the carbon agenda, we've got the carbon goals that we're trying to achieve. In general terms, we know it takes around about 3 times the amount of carbon to produce, so 3-to-1 ratio to produce plastic. So when I tell you that plastic production is due to triple by 2050, so therefore you'll never hit your carbon goals if we allow that to happen. So we've got to bring the plastic question into the equation of carbon reduction. I get what you're saying about reducing the weight, because that reduces your carbon transportation costs, if you like. But there's different ways to do it, and Dan has got some great products there that we can work with to help companies. I mean, I visit sites all the time, and you know, you see bricks coming to site wrapped in shrink wrap, and we've reduced the thickness of the shrink wrap, so we are doing the right thing. We've reduced our plastic by 30-40%. Great, but it's still plastic, and it'll still go in the skip, because you can't do anything. You can't separate it, because you can't. Timber, metal, wood, paper can be recycled infinitely almost. One of the unintended consequences at the moment, because as you're probably aware, there's plastic tax that's coming on virgin polymer. Yeah. And of course, what everybody's now, the narrative is shifting into, we're now using recycled plastic, or we're using ocean plastic. But of course, that doesn't actually fix the problem, does it? From a recycling point of view, you're back where you were. Most plastics can only be recycled a maximum of 3 or 4 times, because the chemical composition of them breaks down. So you have to keep adding fossil fuels to keep the bind together. Dan knows much more than this, I think, than me. I'm not technical, but maybe Dan, you want to
coming up on the sofa. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Being attacked by the hound.
It was good to have a mate. Yeah.
When I start talking, they just think, oh, they must be talking to me.
Yeah.
Why? One's part German Shepherd, Ollie. He's not a lapdog. Right, boys, off. Very obedient, obviously. Apollo.
So I've got a question. Whilst Dan's fighting off the hind,
I just feel bad keeping them off.
What role can technology play to drive viable and sustainable change to create future construction methods and building materials which are made from sunshine and plants? I think that's a question for you, Neil.
What role?
And
right, okay.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I, like David sort of alluded to before, we've got to start looking at natural materials, and, you know, looking at how we can harness natural energy, sun, water, land, you know, what we can do with that. And I think there's some great innovations and products now coming on stream that are being developed. I know David is doing in terms of insulation products and building blocks. We've got to look at these alternatives, but we've got to be able to understand the scalability of it as well. The challenge in the construction market will be not so much the small projects, but the larger projects, when demand is quite high, can we deliver on those, on those requirements? And at the moment, I'm not so sure the scale is there, but if we can get it there to a point and we can start growing things like miscanthus in the UK, I think I mean, David, you'll know more about this than me, but there's a benefit now of farmers developing land to do this sort of stuff, rather than, there's an advantage to them, and there's a grant, I think, that's available to them now to do this.
Well, we're definitely moving in the right direction. Yeah. I mean, as is usual, these things take quite a while to come through. But you're absolutely right. We do need to get more volume. We need to get more provenance on the materials that we're using. And I think it probably, Neal, just in terms of the construction industry. I mean, I'm pretty certain that the recyclability of materials has not been considered to the degree that it should have been, because it's easy just to go in with in our minds, a wrecking ball, just smash the lot down, grind it all up and use it for road surfaces or whatever. But I'm pretty certain, that there is an awful lot more than we could do. We know that, we could make more use of timber. Certainly, as you say, we've been working with Exeter University, as you know, and we've produced a carbon negative block. At the moment, it's non-structural, but certainly, we've spoken to people who think it could be of considerable interest in terms of internal walls and things like that. It's carbon negative, so that's got to be a good thing.
Plus, everything's not somewhere, doesn't it, David? You can't expect to have this new idea and get the perfect solution immediately, can you?
No, not at all.
To make any of these things work, whether it's construction or packaging, you have to scale it. You have to think big, and investors have got to realize that they're not going to get a payback in the next year or two. It's going to be a 10-year grind.
That's still a big challenge. That is really the big challenge, because I find this all the time. Because we talk to tier 1 contractors, Kier Langer, Oak, Balfour Beatty, BAM, Wilmot Dixon, etc., and they all love what we're doing, but they all say it's cost, but it's going to impact the cost. And hang on a minute, what happened with LED lights? We said for years LED lights will save you 66% energy costs, but the landlords didn't want to do it because it cost them up front, but it would benefit long term both the tenants and the landlords, because the 10 years guarantee and then reduce your energy costs by 66%. Now we're finding LED lights are actually 3 or 4 times cheaper than fluorescent fittings. So things will happen, but what we need is for that to change. Paint was the same. We went from leaded paint to non-leaded paint, because lead is a nasty component. What did we do with asbestos? We actually banned it, because that was the thing that was magic for everyone. It gave us insulation, it gave us warmth, it did everything that we needed to do, but then it started killing people. Oh, that's not good, we better ban it. And that's we asked the question, is plastic the new asbestos? I think it is.
I think that's probably a little bit strong, but I think that taxation needs to put plastic on the right level playing field with other competing materials. You can't. Plastic is subsidized by the oil and gas industry, by the petrochemical industry. It's a waste product for them, let's face it, and it has to be taxed properly.
Yeah, I agree. We're not about demonizing plastic here. We do understand it has a purpose and a place, because it's cheap, it's flexible, it's easy to fit, use, on all the right reasons for using it. But we've got to start thinking about how we can reduce and reuse. I'm not so sure the recycling, well, I'm convinced the recycling model isn't the solution, because ultimately all you're doing, in my view, there was an article this morning by Ocean Regeneration, which is a great company run by Jo Ruxton, who's a fantastic, really good friend as well, and she's an inspirational leader. And they talk about plastic recycling now, and talk about, well, how does it work? Because we're going to use plastic in roads. We're already seeing evidence of microplastics coming out of car tires, and now you're going to have plastic to tarmac. And in hot countries, how's that going to work? It's going to continue to leach back into the land, into the environment where David's trying to grow his miscanthus.
Somebody only yesterday was saying to me, well, why don't we make bricks out of recycled plastic? And I said, yeah, but what's that going to do? When it gets hot, it gets cold, and it starts to break down. What's that going to look like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years time?
Well, the report in the University of Newcastle in Australia concluded that they did some research in this, and the research concluded that on average, every human being consumes 1 credit card of plastic every week. Now, we're only just starting to learn what the impacts of that are, and there's a lot of research now being conducted on the human health impact of plastics. So that stuff is starting to come through now. There was a report recently that was written about phthalates, that I don't know how you pronounce that, phthalates. So it's a composition of plastics to make it more flexible, to make it pliable to use in different situations. But that's having an impact on respiratory and cardiovascular, and also carcinogenic impacts on humans, and they're starting to understand the impacts of that now. So it's a chemical at the end of the day. It's not a natural material, it's a chemical.
We need to be careful when we say things like polymers and chemicals, because pretty much most things we have are polymers.
Everything's a polymer.
Yeah.
And of course, everything's a chemical.
They're a good one, and there are good ones as well.
Toxic chemicals would be the one. Yeah. I mean, the research on plastics and human health and animals has been around for quite a number of years, to be fair. It's just been severely neglected because lobbyists tend to shoot these people down. It can potentially cause inflammation wherever it ends up in the body as well. And inflammation is a wonderful thing. It starts the healing process effectively. But when it's around too long, that's when it starts damaging things. And like you say, respiratory, cardiovascular, your liver, your stomach, your intestines, it can end up anywhere. On the
it's good to have a medic on the team, isn't it?
I'm just severely boring, basically.
No, you're not.
All the time.
I've learned more about all these things since you've been on the team.
Carcinogenic side of it. Everything carcinogenic.
I'm just conscious. Sorry, sorry, Dan, to cut you off. I'm just conscious of everybody's time.
David,
I know that keeping people's attention.
Yeah, let's spearhead then. David, miscanthus, how's it going to replace plastic in some situations?
Boom.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Solve the problem, David. It's on you, buddy.
Right, over to you.
Oh my goodness.
He just needs about 150 million quid, something like that, maybe 200 million.
Easy. I'll have that for you by this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's more a case of actually, looking at the areas where do we actually need to use plastic? I mean, I go back to, when a time when people used to buy their shopping in brown paper bags, and all of a sudden they needed plastic. Well, we're going back to the old consumer issue again. Is saving a few minutes of your time worth the cost of the planet and future generations? No, I don't think so. I think you could easily go back to utilizing more sustainable materials for your wrapping.
Just changing behavior, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real behavioral thing, because we've got used to a society where everything has to happen immediately. And the cost of that has been, communities and all sorts of things, the sort of unseen costs. So I think we can definitely replace an awful lot of plastic through things like fiber-based packaging and so on and so forth. There's going to be areas where it's going to be really, really, really difficult. I mean, people talk about bioplastics, and actually my take on bioplastics is all you're doing is replacing one problem with another problem. Although they are renewable in terms of they come from a renewable source, but the fact is they will break down into microplastics, and they will take a period of time to break down completely. And I suspect we don't know really the damage that could come from those just yet. So I think I've always got this thing these days in my head that whenever a business is looking at a new product or a new development, or actually looking at how they improve something, why don't we just bring nature to the table as a stakeholder and actually say, what can we get from nature? What can nature provide us in actually trying to achieve our goals? And by virtue of doing that, what we'll actually do is reduce in some way. And I think I think it's a process of attrition. I don't think, there's no way we're going to replace plastic today, but by a combination of mindset of actually bringing nature to the table in terms of product development, I'm sure that over a period of time we can actually achieve great things. But we
haven't got a lot of time. We are literally we're at the last stop at the OK Corral.
Yeah, I know. I get what you're saying, Ian. But when you look at everybody, you look at all the guys who are out protesting and not actually taking real action. Oh, I know. We'll go out and raise a protest, and they're all carrying the latest in mobile phones, the latest in everything. So there's actually very little thought by a lot of people in coming up with solutions. They want somebody else to do it, and we have to do it ourselves.
I think also, Dave,
but it needs to be supported with policy, doesn't it?
I think you're absolutely right, David, and it absolutely needs to be supported by policy, but it needs to be incentivized as well financially, because the commercial managers and the accountants of this world who run the world, let's face it, are the ones that have the final decision. And if it's too much and if it's costly and we love it, but we can't make the project stack up because it doesn't work financially running that way. So we'll keep running our other way until it becomes mainstream. Somebody's got to break that mold. We're lucky enough to be working with some fantastic organizations that are willing to spearhead this and spend more money on proving the concepts. That's the really exciting thing that we're finding now. The people that really do want to engage with us, and I know that people that have also engaged with David are the people that are visionary. They're the people that are willing to put their nuts on the line to commit to this and prove the concept and make
fantastic
it
term there.
Yeah, well, it's true, isn't it?
Sounds like a term that Dan would use. Yeah. Well, I've got one final question. I always end with this, and you know what's coming. So what are you reading now, assuming you are reading something? And what do you recommend? What's your life-changing book that you recommend to people? Neil first.
Oh God, a book that I would recommend that I've just finished is *A Life on Our Planet* by David Attenborough. There's many books, as you can see. I've had a bookshelf full of them. I'm quite an avid reader now, but *A Life on Our Planet* is a fantastic book. You might have seen the series on TV. This is quite different. It talks about that. It's the narrative of the previous 10 years, that each decade leading up to where we are now, which will kind of break your heart. And then it gets to the point now, and it gives two options. We can either fork right or fork left, and the scenarios are played out in terms of, what the potential endpoint or potential next steps are. But what I really enjoy is the fact that the endpoint on the book gives you hope. And I think we have to keep hope alive in this.
Absolutely.
Because it can be really, this space can be really overwhelming. It can be totally overwhelming. And I can understand this. People suffering with mental problems because they get depressed. It depresses people. But that book will give you hope if you continue to read the
I'll make sure I read it. And David, how about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm slightly offbeat. I'm reading. Every book has an effect on me, so there's no one book I can pick out. But I'm reading one at the moment which I'm really into, which is called Punk Science, and it's written by Manjir Samantha Lawton, and it effectively she's basing this on the premise that thoughts create matter. And
I'm all into that. Oh yeah, yes,
you'll love this one, Ian, if you read it. And I actually subscribe to it quite well, because I actually think we can change our world by actually having the right thinking to move forward, create the products, the replacements for plastics and so on and so forth, providing we all subscribe and we all think about how we can do that and actually work towards it. So
I subscribe to that way of, I actually believe that ideas have mass.
Oh, very much. Yeah, the thought particle.
Thought particle, exactly. Well, look, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sorry I've got to wrap it up because I've got to go and talk to a bunch of young ladies, 15 and 16-year-olds at Chelmsford Girls Grammar School. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. It's really appreciated. I know you're very busy, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Dan, as well.